great day. If you guys are listening to the podcast, then that means that you guys notice that things are indeed changing. But as one of my most favorite gospel artists, William Murphy III, says, change is good. His song Changes also says that in order to change, you've got to go through some changes. But I'm going to leave that right there because I love that song and I will not attempt to sing it because I will not butcher his beautiful gifts of the song. But if you have not listened to it, it's on YouTube, on other music platforms. It's called Changes. And it's absolutely a timely message for now. Now, I do want to welcome you guys to the podcast. You are listening to She Who Believes, and I am your host, Vivian Bell, and I am indeed She Who Believes. Now, I started this podcast 5 years ago at the leading of God, and I will continue to work, create, build, pray, and believe God. As long as He keeps speaking to me and instructing me, I will keep right on saying yes and sharing things to encourage you guys to stretch your faith and to believe God for big things, to believe Him indeed. Now, there are lots of really great changes, one being the change in time and date that this podcast will air, which is now Thursdays at 8:30 a.m. Again, that is Thursday at 8:30 a.m. You will get each new podcast episode will be released at that time. And that's on every music platform. That's on YouTube. That is on the website. That is on Spotify, Apple Music, Audible, Amazon Music, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, everywhere that you can listen to podcasts, you will find She Who Believes, and there we will be on Thursday mornings at 8:30 a.m. Now, as well, there will be a second podcast on Tuesdays at 3 p.m. entitled The Recovery. This podcast will launch in February. And the title, again, is The Recovery, Life After Heartbreak. Now, this podcast is actually for everyone, as we have all experienced heartbreak, whether in a romantic relationship, friendship, parent-child relationship, sibling, and other familiar relationships. Maybe you were even heartbroken or have been heartbroken by your very own life decisions. The question often remains, how do I move on? How do I rediscover myself or become the person that God has created me to be when I'm broken? And if you would like to be a guest on this show or on either podcast, where we will be answering questions, encouraging you to continue to stretch your faith, then you can do that by there's a link entitled Podcast Survey that is listed in the description of this actual podcast episode. So again, no matter what platform you're listening on, there is a description section, and there you will find the link to apply to appear on the podcast. If you'd like to submit questions for the podcast, you can write us at info@mindingwhatmattersnow.com or visit the podcast platform at anchor.fm/Vivian-Bell. Again, that's anchor.fm/Vivian-Bell. And there you'll choose the button that says send a message. Or I think it says to record a question or record a comment or something like that. You'll see the button. And this link will also be found in the description. So the link to record is in the description. The link to apply to appear on either podcast for the year of 2024 will also be in the description of the podcast, of today's podcast. Well, the title of today's podcast are the last two letters of the word shift. Now, this month we have discussed S is for searching, where we discuss finding the why and searching for the cause of it all, finding what has us stuck, or maybe just kind of have a hang up about. And then H is for honesty, and it's about exactly what it says, being honest about it. Whatever the it is that you found while you were searching in the first week, be honest about it. Then I is for introspection, taking a good look inside, but instead of looking for what is wrong with us, we are discovering how we can do it better, whatever your it is. Maybe your it is parenting, maybe it's your marriage, maybe it's your business, but we are searching to find out how we can do the it that may be causing us to be become stagnant or to be stuck, and how to overcome that. Now, those first three letters spell S-H-I, which is the beginning of shift. And today we're going to address the last two letters because we did not record an episode last week because I was on the Great Unplug and I was in Texas enjoying my son's graduation from the Air Force. I've shared that with you guys over the last several months. It was an amazing, amazing event to be at, not just because my son was graduating, but literally I watched a total of 756 people become members of our United States Air Force, and there was about 20 of those people there who also received their American citizenship that day. So it's absolutely amazing. Well, the title of today's podcast, the F and the T, stand for Forward in Truth. Now, sometimes momentarily, hard work isn't as hard as maintaining the changes that have come from the results of the current shift in our lives. Now, whether your shift included changing locations mentally and or physically, or if the shift was in your total perspective of yourself and God, there was some hard work that took place over these last several weeks. We have discovered things that we may not like about ourselves, or we may have discovered ways that we have allowed others to treat us that we don't like, and that we may have been required to change or make adjustments about. Now, undoubtedly, some of us have discovered that we weren't quite over a situation that we had possibly just stuffed down and survived, right? But what I pray we all walk away with is the truth that we are loved of God and that He delights in blessing us. That our poor decisions and momentary failures produce great glory for God in our lives and the lives of others. Those who have a front row seat to what we often call or consider disasters, really is a show for them to see how to make necessary adjustments in their own mindsets to adjust their expectations and the general way in which they live their lives. And these things will not only help them and set them free, but it will free generations that are still yet to come. Take the truth that you have learned, good, bad, or ugly, and let it guide you on the path that God has set for you. God makes no mistakes, and everything that He does has purpose, including the creation of your life, your family line, and so forth. All of it was created on purpose. So it's time for you to decide to live on purpose, or to live in your purpose on purpose. So God has set a purpose for all of us, but it is really up to us whether we live it out or not. God is so amazing that He orchestrates our lives for us, as far as like He orders our steps, but then He gives us the freedom to decide whether or not we want to have His will in our lives. I pray that you will choose what God has chosen for you, because He always knows what is best for us and greater for us. Again, He won't force it on us, but He's definitely made some really great choices and laid out some great things before us. Now, I'm not naive to believe that bad things happen. Bad things do happen to good people. However, there's not one bad thing, even the thing that we may have caused, that we cannot learn a lesson from, grow from, and then share that experience with those coming after us, so that they either don't have to make that same mistake, or they're able to walk through the aftermath of a mistake or maybe a wrong choice with more strength, with more tenacity and more determination to not only just survive that situation, but to overcome it and to come out of it stronger, all because they watched us do the same. Well, today's scriptures are as follows. I'll be reading John 8:31 through 32, as well as Isaiah 40:27 through 31. Both are from the English Standard Version, and they read as follows. John 8:31 through 32 states, "So Jesus said to the Jews who had believed Him, 'If you abide in my word, you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free.'" The truth about us from God's perspective is the only truth. Knowing that you are loved of God and called for a purpose is freedom, if you choose to believe it and accept it. Isaiah 40:27 through 31 reads as follows. Why do you say, O Jacob, and speak, O Israel? My way is hidden from the Lord, and my right is disregarded by my God. Have you not known? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the end of the earth. He does not faint or grow weary. His understanding is unsearchable. He gives power to the faint, and to him who has no might, he increases strength. Even youths shall faint and be weary, and young men shall fall exhausted. But they who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. If you joined us on or in this shift, or if this is your first time listening, and you might be wondering what in the world is this shift she's speaking about. Well, the shift is what God is doing in the earth. When he takes us from one place to the next, when he gives us revelation. But the shift is also a mindset transformation workbook that I created that helps you walk through shifting from being stuck to walking in your purpose through strategic mindset changes. I've talked here on the podcast before about how our brains are neuroplastic, and our thoughts travel down neural pathways in our brain. And we can retrain our thoughts, teach our thoughts to take a different path, which ultimately changes the makeup of our brain, because that old path eventually is no longer used, it's closed off. And then this new path, this new opening, this new way that we've learned to think will not only change our minds, but it'll change our lives and just everything about us. So in this handbook, this workbook, and I call it a workbook because it is work. Like, it is literally work. It's hard work, but the you that will be produced after the work, oh, I promise you, what you will have to walk through while you're working it just pales in comparison to what God has for you. You can join the over 200 people who have downloaded the workbook in e-form, or you can purchase a 107-page workbook online at Minding What Matters Now, or or on Amazon.com. Now, before we leave you, we want to shout out the locations where you all show up week after week. You come to the website week after week to follow, to read the blog posts, to purchase, and we appreciate you very, very much. You guys had to make the transition from vivianbell.com. We totally rebranded this year, but you guys have just come along with us, and we're so grateful. So we're shouting out of the United States, Canada, UK, Australia, India, Germany, South Africa, Greece, the Philippines, Singapore, Belgium, Finland, Sweden, Morocco, Spain, France, Republic of Korea, Republic of Lithuania, Pakistan, Romania, the UAE, Argentina, Austria, Brazil, China, Israel, Italy, Japan, Kenya, Kazakhstan, Morocco, Netherlands, Portugal, Slovenia, and the Ukraine. Now, not only are we shouting you out and saying thank you, know that we are praying for you. We're praying for your families, for your homes. We're praying for leadership in your countries. And we are just very grateful that you are continuing to trust us to share the word of God with you, to coach you, to counsel you, to teach you. And we do not take any of this lightly. Now, the states that are following us, that are getting coached, that are following us on socials or the blog and all of that, we thank Florida, Ohio, New York, Texas, California, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Virginia, Georgia, Minnesota, South Carolina, Illinois, Washington, Michigan, North Carolina, Alabama, Indiana, Wyoming, Iowa, Missouri, Colorado, Oklahoma, North Dakota, Idaho, South Dakota, Kentucky, Arizona, Maine, Alaska, and Oregon. I know that's a mouthful, right? But we thank you guys again for just continuing to show up. And the order in which I read each country as well as the states is the order from the most listeners to the least amount of listeners. And our podcast, we continue to have the same followers there. And we thank you guys in the United States, Germany, UK, and India. And specifically, the most listened state and across all of our platforms is Florida, because that's your girl's home state. But then there's also Washington, Virginia, California, North Carolina, Ohio, Texas, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Georgia, New York, Arkansas, Michigan, Illinois, Tennessee, and New Jersey. And if you want to hear your state be shouted out earlier in this shout out, then share this podcast with your friends, with your local family, and let them jump in and listen and allow them to be blessed as well. Remember, they're not blessed because I am hosting this podcast, but because God has directed us all to share in His glory, and if not in His glory, but share in His love. And we actually do bring glory to God when we worship Him, when we are believing His word, trusting Him, expecting Him to bless us. So He just blesses us to do that. And we are blessed to be here, and we are blessed that you guys continue to trust us to share a word with you. So as always, it has been a pleasure to be with you guys here at the podcast. Again, you are listening to the podcast, She Who Believes. And I am your host, Vivian Bell, and I am indeed She Who Believes. And until next time, I want to challenge you to believe God. No matter what you're facing, no matter what it looks like, trust what God has said to you, whether it is in His written word or it's a word that He has spoken to your spirit when you are praying to Him, asking Him for things, when you are worshiping Him. Trust His word, believe God past what you see, and keep speaking what He has said until you see what He has said. We'll see you here next week on Thursday at 8:30 a.m. God bless you and have a most wonderful weekend.